Welcome, weary traveler, to a journey not through bustling cities or thrilling adventures, but into the quiet, often overlooked corners of history. Tonight we drift back thousands of years to the sun-drenched lands along the Nile, to a civilization that has captivated imaginations for millennia, ancient Egypt. Forget the dramatic narratives you might have heard. Our purpose here is not to excite, but to gently guide you through the daily realities of a world long past. A world where life was lived under the watchful eyes of pharaohs and gods. A world that perhaps you wouldn't have lasted a single day in. So dim the lights, find a comfortable position, and let the gentle current of history carry you into a state of deep relaxation. We begin our exploration of a day in ancient Egypt, not with grand pronouncements, but with the subtle shift from darkness to the relentless embrace of the desert sun. Imagine, if you will, the first faint blush of dawn, not as a gentle awakening, but as a prelude to an insistent, unyielding force. In ancient Egypt, the sun, Ra, was not merely a celestial body. It was a divine entity, a powerful and omnipresent ruler whose presence permeated every aspect of life. And from the moment it began its ascent, its power was undeniable, especially within the confines of your humble reed hut. There are no thick curtains here, no modern conveniences to filter the burgeoning light. The sun, a golden spear, pierces through the woven reeds, painting the interior with stark, uncompromising brightness. This isn't a soft, gradual transition from night to day. It's an immediate, almost aggressive announcement of destiny. The air, still holding a faint memory of the night's coolness, quickly begins to warm, a subtle shift that will, by midday, transform into an oppressive, baking heat. You stir on your straw, man. A surface more akin to a rough bed of grasses than a plush mattress. The linen sheet, your only concession to comfort, offers little more than a symbolic barrier against the rising temperature. The promise of a gentle Nile breeze, often romanticized in tales of ancient lands, is, in this reality, a fleeting whisper, perhaps a memory from a cooler season or a distant dream. It is gone, swallowed by the vast arid expanse that surrounds. As you reluctantly push yourself up, the temperature outside is already climbing, flirting with levels that in a modern context would send most scurrying for air-conditioned refuge. But here, in ancient Egypt, this is merely the beginning. The sun does not merely shine, it asserts its authority, a constant, radiant pressure that shapes every waking moment. Your simple linen tunic, designed for breathability, feels like a flimsy shield against an invisible, fiery assault. It offers little protection, clinging to your skin as the first beads of sweat begin to form. The concept of sunscreen, of lotions and creams to ward off the sun's relentless gaze, is utterly alien. There is no aloe vera to soothe sun-kissed skin, no SPF 50 to create an invisible barrier. The ancient Egyptians, in their wisdom, did possess protective oils, often derived from plants, but these were luxuries reserved for the wealthy, for priests, for those who moved within the hallowed halls of temples. For the common person, for you, such amenities are beyond reach. Your best, perhaps only recourse against the sun's fiery embrace is to smear yourself with mud, or, in a more desperate and perhaps less appealing scenario, with crocodile dung. These natural coverings, while far from glamorous, offer a thin, earthy layer of defense, a desperate hope that they might prevent you from becoming a human torch. The emphasis, it must be noted, is on might. By the time the sun reaches its zenith, casting short, sharp shadows, the very stones beneath your bare feet radiate a heat intense enough to cook lentils, a stark reminder of the sun's pervasive power. Shade, a precious commodity, is a luxury rarely afforded. Trees are scarce, their verdant canopies a distant memory in this parched landscape. A brief respite might be found behind the thick, sun-baked walls of a mud-brick dwelling. But even these structures, designed to offer sanctuary, are by now exuding their own warmth, radiating the accumulated heat of the day. You, on the other hand, feel as though you have been placed within a clay oven, forgotten, left to slowly bake under the relentless gaze of Ra. And to complain, to utter a single word of discomfort, is not merely impolite. It is, in this world, a profound... Ra, the sun god, is watching, his divine eye ever present. In ancient Egypt, the sun was not simply a meteorological phenomenon. It was the embodiment of divine authority, a tangible manifestation of Ra's power. The hotter the day, the more potent Ra's presence, the more profound his influence. So, if you find yourself melting, if the heat becomes an almost unbearable burden, consider it, in a strange and perhaps uncomfortable way, a spiritual compliment, a testament to Ra's immense and unwavering power. In essence, to survive even a single morning in ancient Egypt demands an almost superhuman capacity for hydration, a profound sense of humility in the face of divine power, and an ironclad tolerance for feeling perpetually on the verge of becoming a perfectly roasted chicken. And this, dear listener, is merely the morning. The day in all its ancient Egyptian reality has only just begun. You have, by now, managed to extricate yourself from the confines of your scratchy straw mat. Your body already feeling the first subtle aches of the day. The good news, a whisper of relief in the burgeoning heat, is that the mighty Nile, the very artery of ancient Egypt, lies but a short walk away. Its presence, a constant hum in the background of daily life, promises a momentary reprieve, a chance to cleanse the accumulating dust and sweat. The bad news, however, arrives before the river itself, a distinct and unmistakable scent carried on the warming air. It is the smell of life, yes, but also of something less pristine, a complex aroma that hints at a fish market after a particularly busy day, perhaps mingled with the earthy, stagnant notes of a swamp that has seen better days. This is the Nile, the revered life-giver, the sacred waterway that cradled and sustained one of the greatest civilizations in history. It is the reason for existence, the source of all abundance, and yet in its raw, unfiltered reality, it is also a testament to the intricate, often unhygienic dance between humanity and nature. The banks, teeming with activity, are alive with the buzzing of flies, the croaking chorus of frogs, and the unsettling scuttle of creatures that, by all logical accounts, should not possess legs, yet undeniably do. And it is here, in this vibrant, somewhat odorous tableau, that you must perform your daily ablutions. The concept of soap, as we understand it today, is a distant, unimaginable luxury. It has not yet been invented, and even if it had, its cost would place it far beyond your meager means. Instead, your cleansing ritual involves the most readily available and ancient of exfoliants, sand. Yes, you read that correctly. Exfoliation, the ancient Egyptian way, involves rubbing your body down with coarse grains of sand, a natural sandpaper, less effective perhaps than its modern counterpart, but undeniably thorough. It is a raw, abrasive process, a testament to the pragmatic ingenuity born of necessity. Your clothes, too, find their purification in the Nile's embrace. The washing process is less about gentle agitation and more about vigorous pounding against smooth river rocks, a rhythmic thud that echoes along the banks. As you work, a silent prayer forms on your lips, a desperate plea that a lurking crocodile will not mistake your humble laundry for a tasty midday snack. And to add another layer of complexity to this already intricate ritual, one must not forget the occasional, unavoidable runoff of sewage from upstream. Remember, this sacred river is a shared resource, a communal bath for people, livestock, and even the occasional funeral boat carrying its solemn cargo towards the afterlife. And yet, despite these undeniable realities, this water, in the context of ancient Egypt, is considered clean, a paradox that speaks volumes about the standards of the time. You scrub, you rinse, and you emerge from the Nile feeling perhaps slightly less sticky and only moderately more concerned about the potential presence of leeches. If your fortune has placed you in a bustling city like Memphis or Thebes, you might, if you are truly lucky, have access to a public basin or a cistern offering a slightly more controlled environment for your ablutions. But for the vast majority, for you it is the Nile or nothing, a stark choice between the river's embrace and the accumulating grime of daily life. And privacy, that modern concept of personal space, is a luxury utterly unknown. This is a public bathing space, a communal ritual shared by families, neighbors, livestock, and the occasional ibis, its long beak pecking around your ankles with an air of proprietary entitlement, as if it pays rent for its presence. Once cleansed, the next vital task is the filling of water jars, heavy clay vessels that are then balanced with practiced ease upon heads, carried back to your mud brick dwelling before the midday sun transforms the clay into a baking oven. It is a daily ritual, a spiritual necessity, and, in its raw physicality, a slightly traumatic undertaking. So, yes, the Nile is sacred. It nourishes the land, cleanses the body, and quenches the thirst of a civilization. But let us not romanticize it into a sparkling oasis. In its raw, ancient reality, it is part miracle, part biohazard, and in the grand scheme of your daily existence, it is all you have. By now, you have endured the crocodile-infested waters of the Nile. You have sandpapered your skin to a semi-clean state, and your body, already weary, feels like a baked fig, a testament to the relentless sun. It is time at last for breakfast, the most important and perhaps the least glamorous meal of your ancient Egyptian day. Let us, for a moment, recalibrate our expectations. Forget the images of lavish feasts, of exotic fruits and sweet pastries. There are no eggs Benedict here, no vibrant fruit bowls, and certainly no iced lattes to awaken your sense. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is not a culinary event. It is, rather, a tactical refueling operation, a pragmatic necessity designed to provide just enough sustenance to face the arduous day ahead. You find yourself seated on a low stool, if such a luxury is afforded to you, or, more likely, squatting in the corner, a posture shared by everyone around you. The centerpiece of this humble meal is bread, and lots of it. It is dense, coarse, and often possesses a chewiness that rivals a well-worn leather sandal. This staple is crafted from emmer wheat or barley, grains that form the very foundation of the ancient Egyptian diet. It is baked in clay ovens, communal structures that in their rustic simplicity may or may not be shared by the local rat population, an unspoken reality of daily life. And do not be surprised as you break off a piece to discover an unwelcome, gritty addition: sand. It is not a topping, mind you, but an uninvited ingredient, a byproduct of the grinding stones used to mill the flour. Consider it, if you must, a daily dose of minerals, a subtle, earthy reminder of the land from which your sustenance springs. Then comes the beer. But before your imagination conjures images of crisp, bubbly craft ales, let us temper those expectations. This is not the beer of modern revelry. This is a thick, cloudy, lukewarm liquid, more akin to a liquid bread, a hearty porridge than a refreshing pint. It is packed with calories, a vital source of energy, and possesses a vague fermented tang, a medieval smoothie with the faint, sour taste of survival. Even children partake in this beverage, not out of a desire for intoxication, but because, in this ancient world, it is often safer than water. The brewing process, a rudimentary form of purification, boils out many of the parasites that infest the Nile, a stark contrast to the river itself, which, as we have already established, functions as a veritable petri dish of microbial life. If fortune smiles upon you, and we speak here of a rare and exceptional stroke of luck, you might find an onion or a few dry dates to accompany your carbon foam concoction. Protein in the form of fish is a rare luxury only available if someone has managed a successful catch and has not, in their immediate hunger, consumed it raw. As you dutifully chew your rock-like loaf and sip your grain sludge, flies, those ubiquitous companions of ancient Egyptian life, buzz around you with an almost proprietary air, treating your humble meal as their own personal buffet. You swat at them with one hand, holding your cup with the other, a constant, weary dance against the persistent insect. And you try, with all your might, not to dwell too deeply on the unsettling realization that this, in all its gritty, unglamorous reality, is likely the best meal you will consume all day. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is not about flavor, not about culinary delight. It is about function, about the raw, unyielding necessity of survival. It fuels your body, providing just enough energy to endure, until the next time someone, perhaps an overseer, hands you another sand-infused brick of bread. Bon appetit, indeed. You have consumed your gritty bread, sipped your chunky beer, and allowed yourself just enough rest to be deemed functional. Now, the true essence of ancient Egyptian life awaits. Work. And trust, dear listener, that the labor of this ancient world makes the concept of modern burnout seem like a luxurious spa day. Unless you are among the privileged few, a scribe, a priest, or a member of the royal family, and let us be honest, the odds are overwhelmingly against that. Your existence in ancient Egypt is defined by pure muscle and dust. There is no air-conditioned cubicle awaiting you, no scheduled coffee breaks to punctuate the day, no ergonomically designed chairs to cushion your weary frame. There is only sweat, the ever-present sand, and the constant, gnawing risk of collapsing from exhaustion before the sun even reaches its midday peak. If your fate has cast you as a farmer, your days begin before the sun has fully asserted its dominance. By sunrise, you are ankle-deep in the rich, fertile mud of the Nile, a thick, yielding embrace that promises sustenance but demands relentless effort. Under the unblinking eye of an overseer whose primary hobby appears to be the relentless projection of his voice, you toil. You yank stubborn weeds from the earth, their roots clinging with surprising tenacity. You plant rows of barley, each seed a tiny prayer for a bountiful harvest. Your tools are rudimentary, wooden plows that scratch the surface of the earth, crude sickles that demand precise, repetitive motions, and most intimately, your bare hands, calloused and strong. If your back aches, if your muscles scream in protest, consider it a perverse form of congratulations. It means in this harsh reality that you are working, that you are contributing to the relentless cycle of survival. If your lot in life is that of a laborer, the demands become even more monumental, almost biblical in their scale. Imagine, if you can, the sheer physical exertion of hauling multi-ton stones, colossal blocks of granite or limestone, destined for the construction of temples, of monuments that will stand for millennia. This arduous task is performed under a blazing, unforgiving sun. Your bare feet navigating treacherous ramps constructed of loose gravel and desperate prayer. There is no concept of occupational safety here. No safety net to catch you should you falter. A misstep, a moment of weakness, and a broken ankle is not merely a painful injury. It is a potential death sentence met with little more than a shrug from a foreman whose focus remains solely on the progress of the work. The construction of tombs, those elaborate eternal resting places, represents another, perhaps even more profound, level of grind. Here, you are hammering limestone, chiseling out intricate burial chambers for individuals who will, in their eternal slumber, enjoy a rest far longer and more profound than you will ever know. And should you, by some catastrophic error, mess up a pharaoh's tomb, should your chisel slip or your calculations prove faulty, let us simply say that your job security might involve a sealed chamber and a very potent curse, a fate far worse than mere dismissal. And if you are a woman, do not imagine yourself exempt from this relentless physical toil. Domestic work in ancient Egypt is not a gentle, leisurely pursuit. It is, in its own right, a form of physical labor demanding and unceasing. You are grinding grain, a repetitive, back-breaking task that transforms hard kernels into life-sustaining flour. You are hauling water, heavy jars balanced on your head, a constant pilgrimage to the Nile and back. You are weaving linen, thread by thread, creating the very fabric of daily life. You are caring for children, their needs constant and immediate. And, in addition to these myriad responsibilities, you are still expected to assist in the fields your hands, though smaller, just as capable of toil. Your only respite, your brief moment of reprieve, comes when a baby naps, perhaps for a mere 7 minutes, a precious window of time during which you frantically prepare dinner, a meal that will provide sustenance for the next cycle of labor. You eat on the go, snatching bites between tasks, your tunic serving as a makeshift towel to wipe away the ever-present sweat. You keep moving, a relentless, almost hypnotic rhythm, because slowing down, even for a moment, means falling behind. And falling behind, in this unforgiving society, means that someone else will claim your grain quota, and you alone will bear the blame. There is no clocking out here, no end to the workday dictated by a ticking timepiece. The sun Ra is your sole supervisor, its descent marking the only true end to your labors. When it finally sinks below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, you crawl home, half alive, your body caked in dust, your mind dreaming of softer sandals and a less aggressive sun god. Work in ancient Egypt is not merely hard. It is endless, a full-body commitment to the raw, unyielding act of survival, day after day, until your body finally gives out, or your overseer, in a moment of cold calculation, decides you are no longer worth feeding. And yet, dear listener, this is not even the worst of it. The psychological burden, the subtle tyranny of belief, adds another layer of complexity to your already arduous existence. After sweating your soul out in the fields or the quarry, after enduring the relentless sun and the abrasive sand, you might be tempted to grumble, to utter a small, perhaps almost imperceptible complaint, a quiet sigh, a muttered, "This job stinks," or a weary, "Why am I doing this again?" Stop right there, because in ancient Egypt, complaining is not just frowned upon. It is, in its most profound sense, potentially treasonous. And why, you might ask, is a simple grumble so fraught with peril? With peril? The answer lies in the very nature of power, in the divine authority that underpins the entire social and political structure. Your boss in this ancient world is not merely a ruler, not just a man who inherited a throne. He is, in the most literal sense, a god. The pharaoh is not some individual who won an election or was born into a particularly fortunate family. He is the human embodiment of Horus, the son of Ra, chosen by the heavens themselves to rule over the land of Egypt, to maintain Maat, that delicate, essential cosmic order that ensures the continued existence of the universe. In other words, if the Nile floods its banks, bringing with it the rich, life-giving silt that nourishes the fields, you thank the pharaoh. If the flood fails, if the land remains parched and barren, well, perhaps you, the humble farmer, did not pray with sufficient fervor. To question the pharaoh's authority is not merely rude. It is blasphemy, a direct challenge to the divine order. To speak ill of him, even in the privacy of your own mud brick hut, could land you a swift and unpleasant date with a whip, a set of heavy shackles, or an early, unscheduled trip to the underworld. A journey you would undertake with none of your favorite burial goods to accompany you. You see his face everywhere, a constant, silent reminder of his omnipresent power. It is carved into the walls of temples, stamped onto coins, even molded into the very bread you eat. His name is chanted in solemn rituals, his image painted larger than anyone else's in every mural, a visual representation of his supreme authority. This is not artistic exaggeration. It is the law of visual and psychological reinforcement of his divine status. And do not, for a single moment, expect to ever see him in person. If you are a commoner, the closest you will ever come to the pharaoh's presence is watching a golden bark, a magnificent gilded vessel, float serenely by during a religious festival. Blink and he is gone, returned to a palace of unimaginable splendor, a world you will never enter, surrounded by a retinue of officials, guards, scribes, and enough gold to finance a small, independent civilization, which, fun fact, he essentially does. If you are fortunate enough to be chosen to work on a royal project, a tomb, a temple, a statue the size of a mountain, you are expected to serve with a sense of divine joy, a profound and an unwavering gratitude for the opportunity to contribute to the pharaoh's eternal glory. At least that is what the state in its infinite wisdom proclaims, and you, in your own wisdom, will say it too, because pretending to be honored to carve stone for 14 hours a day is a far safer alternative than expressing your true feelings. And do not even think about rebellion. Pharaohs, throughout the long and storied history of Egypt, have crushed uprisings with a speed and brutality that would make even the most hardened modern general flinch. Just ask the last village that attempted to withhold its taxes. Oh, wait, you can't. It no longer exists, wiped from the face of the earth, a stark and silent warning to any who might entertain similar thoughts. So yes, the pharaoh is divine, a living god on earth, and you, in the grand cosmic scheme of things, are just lucky to be allowed to sweat in his name. Now, get back to work. The sun is still high, and the stones will not move themselves. If you thought surviving the relentless gaze of the sun was a formidable challenge, just wait until you come to terms with the pervasive, insidious nature of sand. In ancient Egypt, sand is not merely a feature of the landscape. It is your roommate, your co-worker, your unwanted seasoning, and, in many ways, your mortal enemy. It is everywhere, an inescapable presence that infiltrates every aspect of your existence. You could be working in the fields, praying in a temple, sleeping on your straw mat, or simply minding your own business in the bustling marketplace. And suddenly, a gust of hot, dry wind sweeps by, transforming your face into a grainy exfoliation experiment you never asked for. Let us begin with your clothing. You wear linen, a fabric prized for its lightness and breathability. It is, however, about as effective at keeping sand out as a screen door as at holding back a determined suit. The fine, abrasive particles slide down your tunic, clinging to your skin with a persistent, irritating tenacity. They find their way into places you did not even know had creases, a constant, gritty reminder of the desert's embrace. Eating, an act that should bring some measure of comfort, becomes another battle against the pervasive sand. Every loaf of bread, as we have already discussed, is essentially a sand trap. The flour, ground between heavy stone slabs, inevitably incorporates tiny bits of grit, a testament to the rudimentary technology of the time. The ancient Egyptians did not just eat their wheat. They ate their millstones too, a slow, abrasive process that wore down their teeth over time. It is why ancient dental remains are often found worn flat, like river rocks smoothed by the relentless current of a stream. Imagine, for a moment, chewing your breakfast while simultaneously filing your molars, a daily, unavoidable ritual. And if you thought your humble dwelling offered a sand-free sanctuary, think again. Your mud brick home with its gaps, crevices, and windows that lack the modern convenience of glass provides perfect portals for wind-blown sand. Your floors are covered in a fine, golden dust. Your cooking pots are full of it, and your bed, that precious haven of rest, is essentially a sand pit disguised as furniture. Shoes, for the vast majority of the population, are an optional luxury at best. Most Egyptians walked barefoot, their feet constantly in direct contact with the hot, sandy ground. This means you are always just one step away from turning the soles of your feet into battered, leathery sandals of your own making. If you do possess footwear, it is likely a basic pair of sandals woven from reeds, fashionable perhaps, but offering only minimal protection against the abrasive terrain. Then there are the sandstorms, Egypt's dramatic, often terrifying version of a slap from the gods. They arrive with sudden swirling fury, blinding and disorienting. One moment, you are engaged in a casual conversation with a friend. The next, you are spitting dust, your eyes stinging, feeling as though someone has just dumped an entire beach into your eye sockets. Visibility drops to zero, and the world around you transforms into a chaotic swirl of vaguely coughing silhouettes. In short, sand is the roommate who never leaves, the unwelcome spice in every meal, the silent, relentless enemy of your eyes, your lungs, and your dignity. It is not just the backdrop of your life. It is, in a very real sense, a part of your body now. And no, you cannot simply wash it off. You have already tried that in the Nile, a river that is, in all likelihood, probably full of more sand anyway. In ancient Egypt, religion is not a weekend activity, not a separate compartment of life to be visited on holy days. It is the very operating system for everything, the invisible framework that governs your job, your diet, your hygiene, and even your bedtime rituals. Every aspect of your existence is dictated by a pantheon of gods who seem to have very specific and often very demanding in its opinions. First, you must understand this. The gods are everywhere. Your town, no matter how small or insignificant, has temples dedicated to a dozen different deities, each responsible for some vital function of the universe. There is Ra, the sun god, who pilots his fiery chariot across the sky each day, a divine Uber driver on a cosmic scale. There is Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, who is in charge of scribes, knowledge, and the intricate calendars that govern the cycles of the moon. There is Sobek, part crocodile, part nightmare fuel, who guards the sacred waters of the Nile. And there is Bastet, the cat goddess, who, in her feline grace, essentially runs public relations for the entire divine pantheon. Forget the modern concept of personal freedom. Your daily routine revolves around the constant, often exhausting task of pleasing these powerful and often capricious deities. You wake up and you thank Ra for returning the sun to the sky. You spill a drop of your beer and you apologize to Hathor, the goddess of love and joy, for your clumsiness. You stub your toe on a loose stone and you curse quietly under your breath, lest you attract the attention of a spiteful spirit with a grudge. Before every meal, you offer a small portion of your food to the gods, a gesture of gratitude and appeasement. Before you lay your head down to sleep, you offer a prayer to the heavens, hoping that Set, the god of chaos, will not decide to toss your humble house into a state of existential disarray overnight. Even funerals are not simple, straightforward affairs. They are elaborate, multi-day events where the deceased must pass a series of tests, avoid a host of terrifying demons, and prove that they were morally decent in their earthly life, lest they risk eternal Oresha, a fate far more terrifying than mere death. Speaking of the afterlife, the ancient Egyptians took it very, very seriously. You do not simply die and move on to a new plane of existence. A cosmic trial that involves your heart being weighed against a single delicate feather of truth. If your heart, heavy with the weight of lies, cruelty, or perhaps the theft of a neighbor's goat, proves to be heavier than the feather, you are unceremoniously eaten by Emmet, a terrifying creature with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the legs of your worst nightmare. So yes, even in death you are still on probation. But here is the twist. This complex, often intimidating, belief system is not, for the ancient Egyptians, a source of depression or anxiety. It is, in its own way, a source of profound comfort. They believed that life was part of a delicate cosmic balance, and that if you followed the prescribed rituals, if you upheld Ma'at, the principle of truth and order, you had a chance at a peaceful and prosperous eternity, complete with all the comforts of your earthly existence. Food, family, and perhaps even a boat to navigate the celestial waters. Of course, the richer you were, the more the gods seemed to notice you. Temples were massive, awe-inspiring structures. Priests were powerful and influential figures. And the peasants, well, they just hoped that the gods were feeling particularly generous that day. Because in ancient Egypt, faith is not optional. It is your job description, your insurance plan, and your travel itinerary for the next life. So you have stepped on something sharp. You have been bitten by something weird. Or you have caught something contagious, which, in the crowded, unsanitary conditions of ancient Egypt, is basically a Tuesday. It is time to seek medical care. Just do not expect a sterile waiting room, a friendly receptionist, or a selection of outdated magazines. You are about to be healed with a combination of spells, herbs, and a healthy dose of sheer, unadulterated optimism. First, you will be taken to a doctor, or, as he is known in ancient Egypt, as WNW. And to be fair, these practitioners were some of the most advanced in the ancient world. They possessed surgical tools. They had access to detailed medical texts and they had a surprisingly decent understanding of human anatomy, gleaned from the practice of mummification. But here is the catch. Science in ancient Egypt always came with a heavy, and often inseparable, dose of magic. You present your ailment, perhaps a raging fever or a painful infection. The SWNW examines you, his brow furrowed in concentration. You might then prescribe a poultice made of honey, moldy bread, and a selection of crushed herbs. Now, from a modern perspective, this might sound like a recipe for particularly an appetizing sandwich. But honey, as we now know, has natural antibacterial properties, and the mold from the bread contains early, naturally occurring forms of penicillin. So, in a strange, almost accidental way, it works, sort of. But before applying this concoction, the healer will, without fail, chant a protective spell, a series of ancient, powerful words designed to ward off the evil spirits that are, in all likelihood, the true cause of your suffering. Because you never know when your stomach cramps are actually the result of a spiteful ghost or an angry god who you have somehow offended. Do you have a headache? You might be treated with a dose of crushed onions, rubbed vigorously into your scalp, while someone recites a hymn to Thoth, the god of wisdom. Have a persistent cough? Let us smear a mixture of cow dung and dates on your chest and see what happens. An eye infection. Time for a paste made of lizard blood, ochre, and beer, accompanied, of course, by a heartfelt prayer to Horus, the falcon-headed god who lost his own eye in a mythological battle. Surgery, surprisingly, did happen. Abscesses were drained, bones were set with surprising skill, and wounds were stitched together with fine linen thread. But there was no anesthesia, no gentle descent into unconsciousness. There was only a sharp knife, a steady hand, and perhaps a good friend to hold you down and muffle your screams. And even in these more scientific procedures, magic was never far away. The surgical tools themselves were often blessed, the bandages inscribed with protective symbols, and the recovery process was as much about appeasing the gods as it was about allowing the body to heal. The ancient Egyptians believed that illness was a disruption of the natural order, a sign that the delicate balance of Ma'at had been disturbed. Therefore, healing was not just about treating the physical symptoms. It was about restoring that cosmic balance, about driving out the malevolent forces that had taken root in the body. So as you lie there, covered in a fragrant mixture of herbs and animal dung, listening to the rhythmic chanting of the SWNW, you can take comfort in the knowledge that you are receiving the very best of ancient Egyptian medical care, a holistic approach that addresses both the body and the soul, with a healthy dose of placebo effect thrown in for good measure. And if you survive, well, you can thank both the SWNW and us. If you do not, well, at least you will have a head start on that whole weighing of the heart business. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long, dramatic shadows across the landscape, the relentless toil of the day finally begins to ease. The air, thick with the heat of the afternoon, starts to cool, and a sense of communal life begins to emerge from the dust and the weariness. Social life in ancient Egypt, much like the land itself, is a world of stark contrasts, a tapestry woven from threads of simple pleasures and rigid social hierarchies. For the vast majority of the population, the farmers, the laborers, the artisans, social life revolves around the family and the village. Evenings are spent in the cool of the courtyard, sharing stories, playing simple games, and sipping on that ever-present chunky beer. Children, their energy seemingly boundless, chase each other through the narrow, dusty streets, their laughter echoing in the twilight. Music, a vital part of ancient Egyptian culture, fills the air. The gentle strumming of a harp, the rhythmic beat of a drum, the haunting melody of a flute. These are the sounds that accompany the end of the day, a soothing balm for weary souls. Board games, surprisingly, were incredibly popular. Senet, a game of strategy and luck, was a particular favorite, played by people from all walks of life, from the pharaoh in his opulent palace to the humble farmer in his mud brick hut. It was more than just a game. It was a symbolic journey through the underworld, a race to the afterlife. But beneath this veneer of simple, communal joy lies a rigid and unforgiving social structure. You are born into your station in life, and there is very little chance of ever changing it. If your father was a farmer, you will be a farmer. If your mother was a weaver, you will be a weaver. The concept of social mobility, of climbing the ladder of success through hard work and ambition, is largely unknown. Scribes, the literate elite, occupy a position of immense power and prestige. They are the keepers of knowledge, the administrators of the state, the ones who record the pharaoh's decrees and tally the grain harvests. They are exempt from the back-breaking labor that defines the lives of the common people. Their hands stained with ink, not with mud. The priests, too, wield enormous influence. They are the intermediaries between the mortal world and the divine, the ones who interpret the will of the gods and perform the sacred rituals that ensure the continued prosperity of Egypt. They live in sprawling temple complexes, surrounded by wealth and luxury, their lives a world away from the daily struggle for survival that defines the existence of the common people. And at the very top of this social pyramid, of course, is the pharaoh, a living god, his power absolute, his authority unquestionable. So, as you sit in your courtyard, sharing a simple meal with your family, you are acutely aware of your place in this grand cosmic order. You might find moments of joy, of connection, of simple human pleasure, but you are also bound by the invisible chains of tradition, of hierarchy, of a social structure that is as solid and unyielding as the Great Pyramids themselves. And as the last sliver of the sun disappears below the horizon, plunging the land into a deep, velvety darkness, you prepare for the final, and perhaps most mysterious, part of your day, the journey into the world of dream, a world that, for the ancient Egyptians, was just as real and just as fraught with peril as the waking world. The darkness that descends upon ancient Egypt is not the soft, comforting blanket of a might-polluted city. It is a profound, almost tangible blackness, broken only by the flickering light of oil lamps and the distant silvery glow of the moon and star. The world, once so vibrant and alive, transforms into a realm of shadows and whispers, a place where the boundaries between the seen and the unseen begin to blur. For the ancient Egyptians, the night was not a time of rest and oblivion. It was a journey. They believed that sleep was a state of temporary death, a time when the Ba, one of the three parts of the soul, would leave the body and travel through the underworld, the Juat. This nocturnal journey was not without its peril. The Juat was a treacherous landscape, populated by a host of terrifying demons and malevolent spirits who sought to ensnare the unsuspecting soul. To protect themselves from these nocturnal threats, the Egyptians employed a variety of magical spells and amulets. Amulets in the shape of the ANC, the symbol of life, or the Eye of Horus, a powerful symbol of protection, were worn around the neck or placed in the home. Spells inscribed on papyrus or whispered into the darkness were used to ward off evil spirits and ensure a safe passage for the Ba. Dreams for the ancient Egyptians were not the random firings of a sleeping brain. They were messages from the gods, omens that could foretell the future or offer guidance on important decisions. A dream of a clear, flowing river might be interpreted as a sign of prosperity, while a dream of a snarling dog could be a warning of impending danger. There were even professional dream interpreters, wise men and women, who could decipher the symbolic language of the subconscious and reveal the hidden meanings of your nocturnal visions. But the dangers of the night were not all supernatural. The darkness also provided cover for more earthly threats. Wild animals, such as hyenas and jackals, roamed the desert landscape, their eerie calls echoing in the stillness. Scorpions and snakes, creatures of the night, sought refuge in the warmth of homes, their venomous bites a constant threat. And of course, there were human dangers as well. Robbers, emboldened by the cover of darkness, might attempt to break into homes, seeking to steal what little a family possessed. So, as you lie on your straw mat, the sounds of the night filtering through the thin walls of your hut, you are not simply resting. You are, in a very real sense, embarking on a perilous journey, a nightly pilgrimage through a world of dreams and danger. You clutch your protective amulet. You whisper a silent prayer to the gods, and you hope that your ba will return to your body safely, that you will be granted the gift of another day, another chance to face the relentless sun, the abrasive sand, and the myriad challenges of life in ancient Egypt. And as you finally drift off to sleep, your last waking thought might be a simple, profound question. Will I survive to see another dawn? And so our journey through a single day in ancient Egypt comes to a close. We have felt the relentless heat of the sun. We have bathed in the murky waters of the Nile. We have tasted the gritty reality of a simple meal. And we have toiled under the watchful eye of a divine pharaoh. We have navigated a world of pervasive sand, of complex religious beliefs, of medicine that blends magic and science, and of a social structure as rigid and unyielding as the Great Pyramids themselves. We have faced the dangers of the night, both real and imagined, and we have, perhaps, gained a new appreciation for the simple comforts of our own modern lives. The world of ancient Egypt, with its golden masks, its grand temples, and its enigmatic hieroglyphs, often seems like a distant, romanticized dream. But beneath the surface of this captivating civilization lies a much harsher reality. A world where survival was a daily struggle, a constant battle against the elements, against disease, and against the overwhelming power of both gods and men. It was a world of profound beauty and profound hardship, a world of intricate ritual and raw, unyielding pragmatism. And as you lie here now, in the comfort of your own bed, in the quiet of your own room, let the gentle rhythm, let the simple, profound, yet simple. The sun will rise again tomorrow, but it will not be the unforgiving sun of ancient Egypt. The water you drink will be clean, the food you eat will be free of sand, and the dreams you dream will be your own. And in that, dear listener, there is a quiet, profound magic all its own. Sleep well, and may your own journey through the night be a peaceful one. While we've touched upon the foundational elements of the ancient Egyptian diet, the ubiquitous bread, and the ever-present beer, it's worth delving deeper into the culinary landscape of this ancient civilization. For most, the diet was remarkably consistent, driven by the agricultural bounty of the Nile and the pragmatic need for sustenance. Beyond the gritty bread and the thick, nourishing beer, the ancient Egyptians relied heavily on a variety of staple crops. Lentils, chickpeas, and beans were common, providing essential protein and fiber. These legumes were often cooked into thick stews or ground into pastes, offering a welcome, if simple, variation to the daily bread. Vegetables, when available, added crucial vitamins and minerals. Onions, garlic, leeks, lettuce, and cucumbers were cultivated in the fertile fields, often eaten raw or lightly cooked. Fruits, too, were a seasonal delight. Dates, figs, grapes, and pomegranates offered sweetness and vital nutrients. Dates, in particular, were a significant source of energy, often dried and stored for consumption throughout the year. The concept of meat for the common Egyptian was a luxury, a rare treat reserved for special occasions, religious festivals, or the tables of the wealthy. While cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs were raised, their consumption was limited. Poultry, especially ducks and geese, were more common, often fattened for their meat and eggs. Fish, caught from the abundant waters of the Nile, provided a more accessible source of protein, though. As we've noted, it was often consumed raw or lightly cured, carrying its own set of health risks. The preparation of food was a communal and often laborious affair. Grain had to be ground, a task typically performed by women, using heavy stone querns that, over time, wore down both the grain and the teeth of those who consumed it. Vegetables and fruits were cleaned and prepared, often with simple tools. Cooking was done over open fires or in clay ovens, a process that required constant attention and skill. Spices, while not as diverse as in later periods, were used to enhance flavors. Salt, derived from the desert, was essential for preservation and taste. Herbs, both wild and cultivated, added aromatic notes to dishes. Despite the apparent simplicity of their diet, the ancient Egyptians understood the importance of balance and nutrition, albeit through practical experience rather than scientific understanding. Their reliance on grains, legumes, and seasonal produce provided a surprisingly complete nutritional profile, allowing them to sustain a physically demanding lifestyle. The consistent intake of beer, while perhaps not appealing to modern palates, offered a safe and calorie-rich alternative to often contaminated water sources. Food was not just sustenance, it was an integral part of their cultural lineage. Offerings of food were made to the gods, and feasts were held to celebrate harvests, victories, and religious holidays. Even in death, food played a crucial role, with offerings placed in tombs to sustain the deceased in the afterlife. So, while your daily meals might have lacked the variety and refinement of modern cuisine, they were, in their own way, perfectly adapted to the realities of ancient Egyptian life, providing the energy and nutrients necessary to endure the relentless grind of existence. And as the sun finally dips below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, you can, at least, look forward to another meal, another opportunity to refuel for the challenges of tomorrow. Having spent a day battling the elements and toiling in the fields, your mud brick home, however humble, offers a welcome sanctuary. Ancient Egyptian housing, for the vast majority of the population, was characterized by its simplicity, its practicality, and its ingenious adaptation to the harsh desert environment. Homes were typically constructed from mud bricks, a readily available and effective building material. These bricks, made from Nile mud mixed with straw and dried in the sun, provided excellent insulation, keeping the interiors relatively cool during the scorching days and retaining warmth during the cooler nights. The layout of a typical home was straightforward. A central courtyard, often open to the sky, served as the heart of the domestic space. This was where much of the daily life unfolded. Cooking, eating, socializing, and performing various household chores. Surrounding the courtyard were a few small rooms, often with minimal furnishing. Beds were typically straw mats, sometimes elevated on low platforms. Storage consisted of clay pots and woven baskets used to hold grain, water, and personal belongings. Windows, as we've noted, were often unglazed openings, covered with reed mats or wooden lattices to provide some privacy and protection from the elements, while allowing for air circulation. The roof, often flat, served as an additional living space, particularly during the cooler evenings, offering a place to sleep under the stars to escape the heat of the interior. Domestic life was largely communal, especially within extended families. Women played a central role in managing the household, preparing food, weaving textiles, and raising children. Children, from a young age, were expected to contribute to household chores and learn the skills necessary for their future roles in society. The concept of privacy, as understood in modern times, was largely absent. Life was lived in close proximity, with neighbors and family members constantly interacting. Despite the apparent simplicity, ancient Egyptian homes were not devoid of personal touches. Walls were often whitewashed and sometimes decorated with simple paintings or woven hangings. Small altars might be present, dedicated to household gods or ancestors, reflecting the pervasive influence of religion on daily life. The air inside, while cooler than outside, was often thick with the smell of cooking fires, dust, and the earthy scent of mud brick. Insects, an unavoidable part of life, were a constant nuisance, buzzing around food and disturbing sleep. Yet, within these humble dwellings, families found comfort, security, and a sense of belonging. They were places of rest, of sustenance, and of the continuation of life, generation after generation. As you settled down for the night, perhaps on your straw mat, the sounds of the village slowly fading into the background, you can appreciate the simple refuge your home provides, a testament to the enduring human need for shelter and community in the face of an all-forgiving world. We've already touched upon the Nile as your primary bathing facility, a somewhat dubious source of cleanliness. But hygiene in ancient Egypt was a far more complex and constant battle than simply washing off the day's grind. Given the hot climate, the prevalence of insects, and the close proximity of people and animals, maintaining health was a perpetual challenge. Personal hygiene, while rudimentary by modern standards, was taken seriously. Egyptians were known for their cleanliness, bathing regularly, often multiple times a day, in the Nile or in public basins. They used natron, a natural salt, as a form of soap, and oils to moisturize their skin and protect it from the sun. Dental hygiene was also a concern, though their methods were abrasive. As we've discussed, the sand in their bread led to significant tooth wear. To combat this, they used chewing sticks and a form of toothpaste made from ingredients like ox hooves, eggshells, humus, and myrrh. While effective at cleaning, these abrasive mixtures likely contributed to further tooth wear. Disease was rampant. Without modern understanding of germs and sanitation, infections spread easily. Dysentery caused by contaminated water was common. Parasitic diseases such as schistosomiasis, bilharzia were endemic due to contact with infected water in the Nile. Eye infections exacerbated by dust and flies were widespread, often leading to blindness. Malnutrition, despite the abundance of staple crops, could occur, especially during periods of poor harvest or for the very poor. Life expectancy was significantly lower than today, with many not surviving past childhood. Those who did often suffered from a variety of chronic ailments. Despite these challenges, the ancient Egyptians developed a sophisticated, if sometimes superstitious, medical system. We've explored their blend of magic and empirical observation. They understood the importance of setting broken bones, treating wounds, and even performing basic surgeries. Their medical texts, like the Ebers Papyrus, detail hundreds of remedies for various ailments, many of which involved herbal medicines that had genuine therapeutic properties. However, prevention as we understand it was limited. The lack of proper sewage systems, the reliance on the Nile for drinking water, and the close living conditions meant that many diseases were simply unavoidable. Constant presence of flies attracted to waste and food further facilitated the spread of pathogens. So, while you might emerge from the Nile feeling somewhat refreshed, the underlying threats to your health were ever present. Every cut, every insect bite, every sip of water carried a potential risk. Survival in ancient Egypt was not just about enduring the sun and the sand. It was about navigating a microscopic world of pathogens, a constant unseen battle for your very well-being. And as you drift off to sleep, perhaps a slight cough or an unfamiliar ache reminds you that even in rest, the body remains a fragile vessel in a challenging world. After a day of relentless labor and constant vigilance against the elements and disease, the ancient Egyptians, like all humans, sought moments of respite and pleasure. While their lives were undoubtedly hard, they were not devoid of entertainment and leisure, albeit in forms that might seem simple by modern standards. Music, as mentioned, was a pervasive and cherished form of entertainment. Harps, flutes, lutes, and various percussion instruments provided the soundtrack to daily life, from religious ceremonies to communal gatherings. Singing and dancing were also popular, often performed at festivals and celebrations. Storytelling was a vital part of oral tradition, with tales of gods, heroes, and everyday life passed down through generations. These narratives provided both entertainment and moral instruction, reinforcing cultural values and beliefs. Board games, particularly Senet and Mayhem, were a favorite pastime. Senet, a game of strategy and chance, was played on a rectangular board with pawns, and its popularity spanned all social classes. It was not just a game. It was believed to have religious significance, symbolizing the journey of the soul through the afterlife. Children had their own forms of play, often with simple toys made from wood, clay, or bone. Dolls, spinning tops, and animal figures were common. They also engaged in physical games, running, jumping, and wrestling, much like children today. Festivals, often tied to religious events or agricultural cycles, provided significant opportunities for communal celebration and leisure. These events involved feasting, music, dancing, and religious rituals, offering a temporary escape from the daily grind. While not as common for the general populace, hunting and fishing were also forms of leisure, particularly for the elite. The Nile and its surrounding marshes provided abundant opportunities for catching fish and fowling. For the wealthy, elaborate hunting expeditions for larger game were a prestigious activity. The concept of tourism, as we understand it, was non-existent, but pilgrimages to sacred sites and temples were common, combining religious devotion with a form of travel. Despite the harsh realities of their existence, the ancient Egyptians found ways to infuse their lives with moments of joy, connection, and diversion. These simple pleasures, often shared within the close-knit bonds of family and community, provided the necessary emotional and psychological respite to endure the challenges of their world. As the night deepens and the sounds of the village fade into a gentle hum, you can reflect on these small moments of entertainment, the fleeting joys that punctuate the relentless rhythm of daily life, offering a glimpse into the enduring human spirit that seeks beauty and connection, even in the most demanding of circumstances. In ancient Egypt, animals were not merely creatures of the wild or beasts of burden. They were integral to every facet of life, serving as companions, vital sources of sustenance, and in many cases, revered manifestations of the divine. Understanding their role is key to comprehending the daily existence of an ancient Egyptian. Domesticated animals were fundamental to agriculture and daily living. Cattle were invaluable, providing meat, milk, and hides, and serving as powerful draft animals for plowing fields and threshing grain. Sheep and goats were raised for their meat, milk, and wool, their presence a common sight in villages and on farms. Pigs, though sometimes viewed with ambivalence, were also kept for food. Donkeys were the primary mode of transport, their sturdy frames carrying goods and people across the desert and along the Nile. Dogs were cherished companions used for hunting, guarding homes, and even as pets. Evidence suggests they were often buried with their owners, a testament to the deep bond shared. Cats, however, held a particularly sacred place. Revered for their ability to control pests like snakes and rodents, they were also seen as embodiments of the goddess Bastet. Harming a cat was a grave offense, and their mummified remains have been found in vast numbers, indicating their profound importance. Beyond the domesticated, the wild animals of Egypt also played a significant role, often appearing in religious iconography and daily life. Crocodiles, formidable predators of the Nile, were both feared and worshipped, associated with the god Sobek. Hippopotamuses, though dangerous, were also revered, linked to the goddess Taweret, a protector of childbirth. Birds, from the majestic falcon, Horus, to the sacred ibis Thoth, were seen as manifestations of various deities, their presence often interpreted as omens or divine messages. The relationship between humans and animals was complex, a blend of practicality, respect, and spiritual reverence. Animals provided the labor that sustained the civilization, the food that nourished its people, and the spiritual connection that permeated their worldview. Their images adorned temple walls, their forms inspired hieroglyphs, and their presence was a constant, tangible link to the divine. As you navigate your day, you would constantly interact with animals, the lowing of cattle in the fields, the braying of donkeys carrying goods to market, the purr of a cat by your hearth, the distant splash of a crocodile in the Nile. Each interaction, however mundane, would carry a subtle layer of meaning, a reminder of the intricate web of life that bound ancient Egyptians to their environment and to their gods. And as the sun sets and the sounds of the wild begin to emerge from the desert, you are reminded that you share this ancient land, not just with your fellow humans, but with a vibrant, living tapestry of creatures, each playing its part in the grand divine order of Egypt. In a world without coinage, where the concept of money as we know it was yet to be fully realized, the economy of ancient Egypt operated on a sophisticated system of barter and exchange. Understanding this system is crucial to grasping the daily transactions and economic realities of the time. The foundation of the Egyptian economy was agriculture. The annual inundation of the Nile provided fertile land, allowing for abundant harvests of grain, flax, and other crops. This agricultural surplus formed the basis of all trade, Farmers would exchange their excess grain for other necessities. Tools from artisans, pottery from potters, linen from weavers. The value of goods was often measured in units of grain or copper. For instance, a certain amount of barley might be equivalent to a specific quantity of oil or a day's labor. This required a constant negotiation and a shared understanding of relative values. A complex mental ledger kept by individuals in their daily dealing. While direct barter was common at the local level, the state played a significant role in larger-scale economic activities. The pharaoh and the temples controlled vast resources, including agricultural lands, mines, and workshops. They collected taxes, primarily in the form of goods and labor, which were then redistributed to support the administration, the army, the priesthood, and large-scale construction projects. This centralized system ensured that essential goods were available throughout the kingdom, even if they were not produced locally. Trade with foreign lands, though less frequent for the common person, was vital for acquiring resources not found in Egypt, such as timber, precious metals, and exotic goods. Expeditions were sent to Nubia for gold, to hunt for incense and myrrh, and to the Levant for timber. These international exchanges were often state-controlled, with the pharaoh benefiting most from the acquisition of luxury items and strategic materials. Markets, while not formal institutions with fixed prices, were bustling centers of activity. People would gather to exchange goods, negotiate values, and socialize. The atmosphere would be vibrant, filled with the sounds of haggling, the smells of various wares, and the constant movement of people. For the average Egyptian, daily economic life involved a constant assessment of needs and available resources. If you needed a new tool, you might offer a portion of your grain harvest to a blacksmith. If you had excess linen, you might trade it for a new pot. This system fostered a strong sense of community and interdependence, as individuals relied on each other for a wide range of goods and services. The absence of coinage meant that wealth was often accumulated in tangible forms: land, livestock, grain, and valuable objects. This made large-scale transactions cumbersome, but also ensured that resources remained within the community, circulating through a network of reciprocal exchanges. As you conclude your day, perhaps you reflect on the goods you acquired or exchanged, the negotiations you undertook, and the intricate dance of value that defined your economic reality. It was a system built on trust, on shared understanding, and on the fundamental principle that every item, every skill, and every hour of labor held an intrinsic value within the grand tapestry of ancient Egyptian life. In a society where the vast majority of the population was illiterate, the ability to read and write was a rare and highly valued skill, a gateway to power, prestige, and a life far removed from the back-breaking labor of the fields. Education in ancient Egypt was primarily the domain of the scribes, a privileged class who held the keys to knowledge and administration. For the common person, formal education was non-existent. Children learned their trades from their parents, inheriting the skills and knowledge necessary for their survival. A farmer's son learned to plow, and so a weaver's daughter learned to spin and weave. This practical hands-on apprenticeship ensured the continuity of essential skills across generations. But for those destined for the scribble profession, life took a different path. Boys, typically from elite families, would begin their education at a young age, often around 5 or 6. They would attend scribble schools, often attached to temples or government offices. where they would embark on a rigorous and demanding curriculum. The primary focus was on mastering hieroglyphic and hieratic scripts, complex systems of writing that required years of dedicated practice. Students would spend countless hours copying texts, practicing their calligraphy on ostraca, pottery shards, or limestone flakes, and papyrus. This was not merely about learning to write. It was about internalizing the vast body of Egyptian literature, religious texts, administrative documents, and historical records. Beyond writing, scribble education encompassed a wide range of subjects: mathematics, astronomy, history, geography, and even foreign language. These skills were essential for managing the complex bureaucracy of the Egyptian state, for calculating taxes, surveying land, tracking astronomical events, and maintaining diplomatic relations. The life of a scribe was one of intellectual pursuit, a stark contrast to the physical labor that defined the lives of most Egyptians. They were the record keepers, the chroniclers, the administrators, the very backbone of the pharaoh's government. Their status was high, their influence considerable, and their lives were generally comfortable, free from the harsh realities of manual labor. The tools of their trade were simple yet elegant: a palette with cakes of black and red ink, a reed pen, and a roll of papyrus. Papyrus, made from the pith of the papyrus plant, was a valuable commodity, and its use was often reserved for important documents. The scribes were not just passive recorders of information. They were also interpreters and creators of knowledge. They composed hymns, wrote stories, and documented the history of their civilization. Their work ensured that the vast cultural and intellectual heritage of ancient Egypt was preserved for future generations. For the common Egyptian, the world of scribal knowledge was largely inaccessible, a mysterious realm of symbols and texts. They relied on the scribes to interpret the pharaoh's decrees, to record their transactions, and to mediate their interactions with the state. This created a clear division in society, a separation between those who wielded the power of the written word and those who did not. As you drift off to sleep, perhaps you recall the sight of a scribe in the marketplace, his elegant hand moving across a scroll, a symbol of a world of knowledge and privilege that remains largely beyond your reach. Yet, even in your illiteracy, you understand the profound importance of their work, for it is through their efforts that the very fabric of your society is maintained, and the legacy of Egypt endures. From the colossal pyramids that pierce the desert sky to the intricate carvings that adorn temple walls, art and architecture in ancient Egypt were not merely decorative. They were profound expressions of religious belief, political power, and the eternal quest for immortality. These monumental creations permeated the daily lives of Egyptians, serving as constant reminders of their gods, their pharaohs, and their place in the cosmic order. For the common person, direct involvement in the creation of these grand works was typically through labor, hauling stones, mixing mortar, or preparing surfaces. Yet, the presence of these structures was inescapable. The local temple, a vibrant hub of religious activity, would be a familiar sight. Its towering pylons and intricately decorated walls a testament to the god's presence. Even humble homes might feature small altars or painted scenes, echoing the grander artistic traditions. Egyptian art was highly symbolic and conventional. Figures were often depicted in a composite view, with the head in profile and the body facing forward, a style that emphasized clarity and completeness rather than realistic representation. Color was used symbolically: red for vitality, blue for water and the heavens, green for fertility. The purpose of art was not to capture a fleeting moment, but to convey eternal truths, to ensure the continuity of life in the afterlife, and to glorify the gods and the pharaoh. Hieroglyphs, themselves a form of art, adorned almost every surface, telling stories, recording history, and invoking divine protection. These sacred carvings were not just writing. They were living images imbued with power. Architecture, particularly temples and tombs, was designed to last for eternity. The pyramids, massive stone mountains, were built as eternal resting places for pharaohs, symbols of their divine power and their journey to the afterlife. Temples, like Karnak and Luxor, were not merely places of worship. They were cosmic machines designed to facilitate communication between the human and divine realms, their alignments often reflecting astronomical events. The construction of these monumental works required immense organization, engineering skill, and a vast labor force. While popular imagination often conjures images of slaves, much of the labor was performed by skilled craftsmen and ordinary citizens, fulfilling their civic duty or working during the annual flood season, when agricultural work was impossible. These projects provided employment, fostered a sense of national identity, and served as a tangible manifestation of the pharaoh's ability to command resources and manpower. Even in the humblest of dwellings, the influence of this grand artistic tradition could be seen. Simple pottery might feature painted motifs, and woven mats might incorporate geometric patterns. The aesthetic principles that govern the grandest temples trickled down into the everyday objects, creating a cohesive visual culture. As you walk through your village, you might pass a craftsman carving a small wooden statue, or a painter applying pigments to a tomb wall. These are not just jobs, they are acts of creation, contributing to a legacy that will endure for thousands of years. The art and architecture of ancient Egypt were a constant, silent sermon, a visual narrative that reinforced the values, beliefs, and power structures of their society. They were a testament to a civilization deeply connected to the divine, obsessed with eternity, and capable of monumental achievements. And as you gaze upon a distant pyramid, a timeless silhouette against the setting sun, you are reminded of the enduring power of human creativity and the profound desire to leave an indelible mark on the sands of time. We have spoken of the Nile as a life-giver, a source of sustenance and cleansing. But to truly understand daily life in ancient Egypt, one must grasp the profound, almost spiritual, significance of the Nile's annual inundation. This natural phenomenon was not merely a seasonal event. It was the very rhythm of existence, dictating the agricultural calendar, shaping the economy, and influencing every aspect of society. The inundation, or Akid, typically began in July and lasted until October. It was caused by the heavy summer rains in the Ethiopian highlands, which swelled the Blue Nile, and by melting snows from the mountains of East Africa, feeding the White Nile. These waters carried with them a rich black silt, a fertile sediment that was deposited onto the floodplains as the waters receded. This silt was the lifeblood of Egyptian agriculture, replenishing the soil and ensuring bountiful harvests. Without it, the land would quickly become barren, and the civilization would perish. The arrival of the flood was eagerly anticipated and celebrated. It was a time of great relief and hope, a tangible manifestation of the gods' benevolence. During the inundation, agricultural work largely ceased as the fields were submerged. This period was often utilized for other activities, such as large-scale construction projects like the pyramids and temples, which required a vast labor force that was now temporarily freed from farming. It was also a time for maintenance of irrigation canals and other infrastructure. As the waters receded, typically in October, the period of parent or emergence began. The rich, fertile silt had been deposited, and the land was ready for planting. This was a period of intense agricultural activity, as farmers worked tirelessly to sow their crops before the soil dried out. The final season, Shemu, or harvest, ran from March to May. This was the time for reaping the rewards of their labor, gathering the mature crops, and preparing them for storage. The entire year revolved around this cycle of flood, planting, and harvest. It dictated the timing of festivals, the collection of taxes, and even the movement of people. The Nile was not just a river. It was a living entity, a divine force that governed the very existence of ancient Egypt. Its predictability, its annual gift of fertility, was seen as a testament to the stability and order of Ma'at. The pharaoh, as the intermediary between the gods and humanity, played a crucial role in ensuring the success of the inundation. Rituals and prayers were performed to appease the gods of the Nile, and the pharaoh's ability to maintain Ma'at was directly linked to the prosperity of the land. For the common Egyptian, the inundation was a time of both anticipation and hard work. While the flood itself meant a temporary reprieve from farming, it also meant preparing for the next season, maintaining the dikes and canals, and ensuring that the precious water was distributed efficiently across the field. The success or failure of the inundation directly impacted their lives, determining the abundance of their food supply and their overall well-being. So, as you live your day in ancient Egypt, you are acutely aware of the river's presence, its subtle changes, and its profound influence on every aspect of your existence. The Nile is not just a geographical feature. It is the very pulse of life, a constant reminder of the delicate balance between humanity and nature, and the divine forces that govern it all. We have briefly touched upon the ancient Egyptian obsession with the afterlife, but its pervasive influence on daily life warrants a deeper exploration. For the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transition, a journey to another realm, the Juat, where the deceased would face judgment and, if worthy, achieve eternal life in the field of reeds, a paradise mirroring the best aspects of earthly existence. This belief system permeated every aspect of their lives, from the construction of their homes to the rituals they performed. The preparation for the afterlife began long before death. Wealthy Egyptians would commission elaborate tombs filled with all the necessities and luxuries they might need in the next world. Furniture, clothing, food, and even servants, often represented by Shabti figures. The walls of these tombs were adorned with intricate paintings and hieroglyphs, depicting scenes from the deceased's life, religious texts, and spells designed to guide them through the dangers of the Juat. Mummification, the elaborate process of preserving the body, was central to this belief. The Egyptians believed that the soul needed a physical vessel to return to in the afterlife. This complex procedure, lasting up to 70 days, involved removing internal organs, drying the body with natron, and wrapping it in layers of linen bandages. While primarily for the elite, even commoners practiced simpler forms of preservation, or at least hoped for a proper burial. The funeral itself was a significant event, a public display of grief, and a crucial step in ensuring the deceased's successful transition. Processions, laments, and offerings were all part of the ritual. The opening of the mouth ceremony, performed on the mummy, was believed to restore the deceased's senses, allowing them to eat, drink, and speak in the afterlife. The concept of judgment, the weighing of the heart against the feather of Maat, was a constant moral compass. Egyptians strove to live a life in accordance with Maat, practicing truth, justice, and order, knowing that their actions would be judged in the afterlife. This belief provided a strong ethical framework for society, encouraging virtuous behavior. Even the most mundane objects of daily life could have a connection to the afterlife. A simple comb might be placed in a tomb, a favorite piece of jewelry, or a well-used tool. These items were not just possessions. They were extensions of the individual, intended to accompany them on their eternal journey. The pervasive nature of this belief meant that death was not a taboo subject, but an integral part of life. Conversations about the afterlife, about proper burial, and about the journey through the Jewat would have been common. The construction of tombs, the preparation of mummies, and the performance of funeral rituals provided employment for a vast number of people, from craftsmen and artists to priests and mourners. So, as you navigate your day in ancient Egypt, the shadow of eternity is never far away. Every action, every decision, every interaction is, in some subtle way, influenced by the profound belief in a life beyond death. It is a world where the living and the dead are inextricably linked, where the past informs the present, and where the ultimate goal is not just to survive this life, but to secure prosperous and eternal existence in the next. And as you finally close your eyes for the night, you might find a strange comfort in the thought that even in slumber, you are participating in a journey that mirrors the ultimate passage, a preparation for the grandest adventure of all. As our journey through a single day in ancient Egypt draws to a close, it is worth pausing to consider the enduring legacy of this remarkable civilization. The echoes of ancient Egypt resonate throughout the modern world, influencing everything from architecture and art to language and popular culture. The most obvious legacy, of course, is the monumental architecture. The pyramids, those colossal testaments to human ingenuity and ambition, continue to captivate and inspire. Their sheer scale and precision of construction remain a marvel, drawing millions of visitors each year and serving as a powerful symbol of Egypt's ancient glory. But the influence extends far beyond stone structure. Ancient Egyptian art, with its distinctive style, its symbolic imagery, and its focus on eternal truths, has left an indelible mark on Western art. From the use of hieroglyphs and decorative motifs to the adoption of Egyptian themes in neoclassical art, its aesthetic principles continue to inspire. In the realm of science and knowledge, the Egyptians laid foundational groundwork. Their advancements in mathematics, particularly geometry, were essential for their monumental construction projects and land surveying. Their understanding of astronomy led to the development of a sophisticated calendar system, which, with minor modifications, forms the basis of our own. Their medical practices, though intertwined with magic, demonstrated an empirical approach that foreshadowed modern medicine. Even language bears their imprint. Many English words, such as oasis, pharaoh, and pyramid, have ancient Egyptian roots. The concept of a 24-hour day, divided into hours, can be traced back to their astronomical observations. Their religious beliefs, particularly the concept of an afterlife and divine judgment, influenced later monotheistic religions. The stories of their gods and goddesses, their myths and continue to be retold and reinterpreted in literature, film, and video games. The very idea of a powerful, centralized state with a complex bureaucracy and a divine ruler found its expression in ancient Egypt, providing a model that would be emulated by later empires. Their innovations in agriculture, particularly irrigation techniques, the development of papyrus as a writing material revolutionized the dissemination of knowledge and laid the groundwork for books and scrolls. In essence, ancient Egypt was not just a civilization. It was a crucible of innovation, a wellspring of ideas that flowed outwards, shaping the course of human history. Its achievements were not merely confined to its own time and place, but became part of a global intellectual and cultural heritage. So, as you awaken from your slumber, refreshed and perhaps a little more appreciative of the comforts of your modern life, remember the ancient Egyptians. Their struggles, their triumphs, their beliefs, and their enduring creations continue to speak to us across the millennia, reminding us of the resilience of the human spirit, the power of collective endeavor, and the profound impact that a single civilization can have on the tapestry of human existence. Their day may have been hard, their lives fraught with challenges, but their legacy, like the Nile itself, continues to flow, nourishing the present and inspiring the future. And with that, our journey concludes. May your own days be filled with peace, comfort, and the quiet joy of a well-rested mind. Good night.